Saudi Cup and welcome to another episode here for the Funkit Pod, Mindful Media and Communication. And today, yes, if you're watching the video feed, it's the most casual podcast episode ever. You see me in a sleeveless shirt, not because I want to flex my imaginary muscles that I've been training forever. Appreciation likes right now. It's because I just got a tattoo and I want the least amount of rubbing from clothes on it. So that's why I went sleeveless today. So apologies for the very casual look today. But I still wanted to talk about, well, the tattoo actually, because I thought, hey, I've just been sitting through hours and hours and hours and hours of pain. Gonna talk about it. But of course, it's always from like a media and communications point of view. I hope I can connect the dots a little bit, like why are tattoos so important to certain people? What do they signify and so on? And that's what we talk about today, okay? And as always, I will throw a few theories in there, of course, so that we understand like how did this all happen? Why is the media talking about tattoos in certain ways? Why do people have certain perceptions? And so on. Okay. The first theory I want to throw at you right off the bat is a theory that we have in communication studies that we call cultural diffusion. Okay, cultural diffusion. So cultural diffusion was, I think, mixing up my researchers. I think it was Franz Boas. He did lots of like cultural research, probably Boas, and like pop culture and so on. So he talked about cultural diffusion as like the spread of cultural items. Okay, so for example, ideas, styles, religions, technologies, languages, and so on, like between different kinds of individuals. Like could be within like a single culture, for example, or from one culture to another culture. Yeah, for example, and I try to research that, I hope you're familiar with it, there's this no regrets tattoo from We're the Millers, like if you're familiar. If not, look it up. It's like there's this comedic take on like the global spread of the English language, right? So especially English language tattoos. I live in Thailand and I see also lots of English language tattoos here. So that highlights how pop culture influences tattoo trends across what you would think are linguistic boundaries, okay? And another example, maybe more a serious example, if you will, is the adoption of like those traditional Maori, and I had to look it up, so let me read it, Maori Tamoko tattoos by non-Maori New Zealanders or non-New Zealanders, non-Maori people, right? Those big Maori, like the rock tattoos, for example. So lots of people have it because it looks amazing. And so this has also spread, right, across different cultures to people that are not related to the Maori, for example, which of course also then leads to a question of cultural appropriation. Could I have this Maori tattoo, for example? I thought it looked super cool too when I saw it, but I did think, and it's just my point of view, I'm not saying it's the right one, but I did feel like that's not my culture and I don't have a relation there. Maybe if I would be living there and I don't know if I would somehow have some kind of like connection to the culture to some extent, maybe it would be okay. But so I felt like that's not for me to do. But that's, again, not right or wrong. That's just my point of view. You could also say, I appreciate the art, right? It looks so amazing. I appreciate the art that goes into it. And that's why I want to showcase it. Would also completely understand that point of view, of course. The second theory I'm going to throw at you is the go-to theory we have when it comes to media studies. Marshall McLuhan, what's the go-to theory? You should be like this by now if you listened to the podcast before. The medium is the message, right? The medium is the message. Marshall McLuhan's like most famous quote probably. And he proposed that the medium itself, not the content that it carries, but the medium itself should be the focus of analysis, of study. Okay, he argued that the medium affects the society in which it plays a role, not only by the content that it delivers over the medium, right? So the characteristics are more important than maybe the message. So the characteristics of the medium itself. I think I might have been a bit too complicated in the explanation. So again, the medium is the message means the medium that you use to send the message carries lots of importance. It's not only the message itself, but the medium that you're using. If I send you a WhatsApp message, for example, or an IG DM, you're like, oh, okay, whatever. If I send you an email, or it's like, oh, what does he want? It's more serious. Or if it's like a letter, like, why did I get a letter like from my university, from my employer? Like, what's happening, right? So could be the same message, but because the medium is different, it carries different weight. Okay, so the medium is the message. Okay. Examples. Let me think. Oh yeah. Okay. So face tattoos in rap culture. I just listened to Post Malone. That's why I came up with this. So face tattoos in rap culture. Like there are others like I like Post Malone right now. So I mean there are others like 6ix9ine and whatnot. So they use the extreme visibility of face tattoos to amplify their image. With Post Malone, kind of funny because he seems kind of cool when you hear him talk in interviews and stuff like this. But lots of rap artists want to be like this. Yeah, I'm all in your face and I'm dangerous, right? And that's why they then get their face tattoos, just like the Island Boys, for example. So the medium, the face tattoo, becomes like inseparable from the message that non-conformity, I'm a rebel, I'm dangerous. Okay, so that could be some. But to also give you, and you see the structure of today, I try to have like something pop cultural and something like a bit more serious. I think like a more serious example could be memorial tattoos, where like the permanence of the medium, because it's a tattoo, it's permanent, it reinforces the message of like this enduring remembrance, right? I have a tattoo here, for example, of my cat that passed away, and every time I look, I'm like, So that's on purpose, of course, and that's like also like, to be honest, might sound weird to those who don't have tattoos. The process of getting the tattoo, like going through all the pain, also like is kind of like important to me at least, because it reinforces the memories, I think. Like, so I got this and that it really hurt. Like this one, it really hurt with the shading and the colors and whatnot, and over the bone and stuff. And so you're like, and then you think about the memories that you had, and you're like, oh yeah, it's worth it. So that's also part of it, okay? But back to the medium is the message. So again, that permanent nature of a tattoo reinforces the message, right? So if I just draw it, for example, if an artist draw a picture, which is nice, but if I actually have it on my skin, it's like, it's really, really, really important. So what's on your skin is really important, matters, and so that's the medium is the message, okay? It enhances the message. Okay. I hope that makes sense, right? You wouldn't just get random stuff tattooed on you, probably. And if you do, then maybe that's also a message. Just like in that moment, I felt like that. It's all a mindset. That's basically. Another theory that we discussed before, I think fits in here very well too, is the theory of semiotics. You know, we talked about semiotics and symbolism and so on before in this podcast. And I think what we can look in here is like there are different, lots of researchers who talk about semiotics. So one very famous one is Pierce. He had like this triadic model of signs. And he says, okay, we have like basically the representation, the form of like which the sign takes, like not the material of the sign necessarily. Then we have the interpretation, like the sense that you make of the sign, right? So you see a sign, like how it looks like. Then how do you interpret it? And then the object, like what the sign actually refers to. So for example, your name as a tattoo. It's like the representation is like the literal words, your name, right? Like if you have your name somewhere written on you. Interpretation is like, is it humor? Is it now irony? Like, why do you have your name on there? And then the object is like the commentary on like commitment maybe and tattoo cliches, for example. Okay, that makes sense. If I think of like something more serious, let's go there. Okay, let's go. The more serious is like the semicolon tattoo project, for example. Okay, so the representation would be like this semicolon, the punctuation, like a semicolon, right? The interpretation would be like, hey, my story isn't over here. I'm gonna continue. Okay, that's why it's the semicolon project. The object is like mental health awareness, suicide prevention, and so on. And this was a movement started back then and has been studied in the context of like lots of social semiotics and so on, even in health communication, where it's also important, of course. So you can see that you have the representation, the semicolon, you have the interpretation, like what it means, like my story isn't done here, and then the objects like mental health awareness, suicide prevention, and so on. Okay, so that would be an example of like the triadic model of science, if you will. I'm gonna continue in that maybe a less sad line of explanation, but still in like something connected to your personality, which then would be the theory of identity construction. Okay, so because we all construct our identities, right? We try to figure out who we are not. And so this identity construction theory views like social interactions as kind of like performances. Okay, first coined, I wrote it down, by Irving. I knew the last name is Goffman, but his first name is Irving Goffman. And he said, well, we're all performing when we're in social interactions, and man, I feel that we're all performing some kind of role, right, when it comes to social interactions. So individuals are basically actors who kind of like manage their appearance, their behavior to create like those specific impressions with different like front stage and backstage behaviors, right? How I act in front of people, how I act like in the backstage with people that know me better, and so on. So for example, a person with a tattoo of like, to be silly first, or like a little less serious, a person with a tattoo of their own face, right? It's like this extreme form of like front stage identity. Like, look at me, I'm very proud of myself. I'm so cool at them. This is like this manifestation of like self-culture. Like, I know who I am, I know what I want. Look at me, I'm so proud of myself, okay? A more serious example could be like the mastectomy tattoos, for example, right? Like, which allow like breast cancer survivors to reclaim their bodies, redefine their identities post-surgery, and so on. So there's actually lots of research on that, and as you can probably hear and see, I'm very much into this topic. So I did read lots of journals on that. And in one journal, and I noted down too, the Journal of the American Art Therapy Association, there's an article that actually explored the tattoos, like how they contribute to psychological healing, which is very interesting, right? So because like after the surgery, of course, you're feeling like certain kind of way, and you're like, and those tattoos help you to like heal, to like accept, heal, start this new chapter of your life, which I think is pretty powerful. So tattoos help to communicate to the outside, but also to the inside, which I think is pretty impressive, pretty amazing. This wouldn't be a media theory podcast if I wouldn't at least mention one, Jean Baudrillard. We talked about him before, and if you remember, when we talk about postmodernism, he's the guy who's like very active when it comes to postmodernism and to like digital impacts on society and so on. And he's the one that coined the term, and my students hate those terms. He coined the term simulacra, and then also explained what a simulation means in this postmodern context. Okay, I'll explain a little bit again. So he argues that in our postmodern society, so we had pre-modern, we had modern, and now we had a postmodern society where everything can be reality, right? And we don't know what's real, what's not real. That's like postmodern in a nutshell, okay? And he said in postmodernism, society has replaced like all reality, what is real, what's wrong, and meaning with symbols and signs. Meaning, yeah, of course we have real stuff, but what you see, you don't know if it's real. It's all like symbols. You look on IG, and it's like all symbolism. It's like, look at my awesome holiday, look at me being there doing awesome stuff, look at this, look at that. That's all symbolism, okay? So he argues that society has replaced reality with symbolism, okay? Symbols, signs, and so on. So if you look at it from a more fun point of view, we could say, okay, for example, you could have like a QR code tattoo on you linking to your social media profiles. It was fun if the first person did it. Wasn't fun when once the 1 million did it, right? But hey, that's an example, okay? Because this kind of like links your physical presence to your virtual presence, all right? Your virtual identity. And it blurs the lines even more between like what's real, what's not, because you're like, this is real, check me out, this is me, but then it's your fake persona on the internet. So you're blurring like your real self with your fake self, so to create this simulation of who you want to be, postmodernism, okay? If I try to think of something that's a bit more real, serious, maybe like AR tattoos, okay? Where like the physical tattoo acts maybe as an anchor for like a digital overlay. And so you scan it and then you point your phone and then something happens. You get the physical overlay. There are companies that actually do this. And again, research this because I'm very much into all those things. So companies like, for example, Ink Hunter, they develop apps that allow users to preview tattoos, for example, using AR. So that creates like the simulation of how your body would look like if the actual change would occur, for example. Okay. Again, we could link this also to the personal identity, though, because again, seeing is believing, especially in postmodernism. So if you get like certain tattoos that make you look like, if you get like the teardrop tattoo, like, oh, he killed the guy. And then, I mean, it used to be a thing that people would say, but everyone can get a teardrop tattoo, right? So it's like seeing is believing. So it's like very much shaping your own personality to showcase it to everybody else, because we don't know what is real and what is not real. Living in a postmodern world is amazing. I'm going to throw, I think, 3 or 4 more at you because, like I said 1,000 times now, I'm very much into this, as you can tell probably. And I found a few more. I found one theory that I found very interesting is the theory of like subcultures. How do subcultures actually work, right? Because in subcultures, the meaning of style kind of like changes between different cultures, right? Because different cultures, they bring together like-minded individuals, of course, who in subcultures, for example, might feel neglected by typical societal standards, and then those subcultures allow them to develop like their own sense of identity. I'm part of this group, like the mainstream group. I didn't fit in there. They didn't like my style, but in this subculture group, I fit in there. Okay, and this could be including tattoos, right? Tattoos could become like a form of resistance to the mainstream culture, for example. It's not that obvious anymore because now tattoos are more widely accepted, but still, lots of cultures around the world, they don't accept tattoos. I just happened to do some part-time work for a company that really doesn't like tattoos and actually asked me to put down my sleeve, to wear a long sleeve when I go to work there. So it's still a thing. And then you're like, watch me, for example, right? So it can still be like a form of like rebellion, for example, but just a form of self-identification. And if you don't like me with my tattoos, well, guess what? Then I don't need you, right? And then you finding your own subculture. Examples would be like the basic like infinity symbols for infinity symbol tattoos, for example. Like it was a symbol of individuality, but it became like quite common that it kind of like ironically, represents like mainstream conformity within certain subcultures. So in certain subcultures, if you have that infinity tattoo, you're like part of the subculture. So that's a demonstration of that concept that, for example, also mainstream culture co-opts subculture styles. So if something keeps catching on, right? For example, that infinity symbol tattoo, then mainstream will co-opt it, will adopt it, and will say like, yep, that is cool. Look at Angelina Jolie having it and whatnot, for example. Okay, and again, I'm not saying if you have it, it's something bad. I'm just saying mainstream media will jump on it. Like, okay, the subculture was a thing, but now we like it, it's cool, whatever. It's so many followers, it's trendy. Let's jump on it, let's co-opt it, okay? Because mainstream culture always goes for what is successful, right? To be more serious and like dangerous, because that's what we do. It's my middle name, it's dangerous. Yakuza. Yeah, God, I hope no one in the Yakuza listens to the podcast, but those Yakuza full body tattoos, I think they're cool. Are they called irasumi? I think they are, right? Those super mega elaborate tattoos, they serve as a sign of like commitment to that subculture and create a very, 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 very visual language, right? And actually, there's lots of research on that too. Like one of the more famous ones, I think, is by Kaplan. He has lots of articles, books, and stuff written on like how these tattoos actually function within the Yakuza subculture, which is incredibly interesting. I also think if you're not in the Yakuza and you say, I'm going to get like a Yakuza-style tattoo, you're probably in trouble. More than if you would get like a Maori tattoo. Okay, but that's that subculture thing. Okay, I'm part of this culture. Look at me. I don't even have to say anything. You just see that I'm part of this culture. Okay, I have I think 3 more. Let me see. Yep, almost there. But I also think, and that's very important for me, the narrative theory. I mentioned it before a few times, but the narrative paradigm is very important because that proposes that all meaningful communication is a form of storytelling. I'm a huge, if you know me or if you listened to my podcast before, like storytelling is like a huge part. I think it's the most important part when it comes to any kind of, but lots of communication, okay, storytelling. And this theory, the narrative paradigm theory, suggests that all people are storytellers to some extent, okay? And values and emotions and aesthetic considerations ground our beliefs and our behaviors, okay? Again, emotions, values, aesthetic considerations, how the tattoo looks and stuff, they ground our belief and behavior. So, for example, like those level up tattoos, right? Like the gaming achievement tattoo, for example, that transforms like a virtual narrative into like a physical narrative, okay? That just embodies that idea of like, that we understand our life through stories. I just leveled up, okay? More serious example in the real world could be like some indigenous tattoos, like those revival moments. You might have seen those, right? Such as the resurgence of, for example, Filipino, I'm in Southeast Asia right now, right? Those Filipino tribal tattoos, for example, they're called batok, if I hope I pronounce it correctly. Lots of research. There's actually also a research paper that I just only like skimmed a little, to be honest, that documents how these tattoos tell stories of like cultural resilience, there's ancestral connections and like personal achievements, which I think is incredibly interesting again. So tattoos tell stories. Like my tattoos don't have a connection to my ancestors, but they all do tell stories. So they all have meaning. I think about the story, then I develop that story with the artist, for example. So they all also have a story attached to it. And that's why I relate so much to this theory, the narrative paradigm theory. Narrative and paradigm should be narrative, whatever. The narrative paradigm theory, because I think like storytelling matters. And if I look at my tattoos, I'm like, oh yeah, that's part of my story. Okay. So that's the narrative paradigm theory. Last two. One is, and I'm smiling a little if you're watching it, because I talk about this theory, not in relation to the tattoos, but in general, in communication with my students a lot, power dynamics. Because power dynamics are like a huge thing when it comes to communication. Okay, the way you communicate can shift power dynamics between different parties. And yeah, so there's one researcher that is very controversial. His name is Michel Foucault. I don't agree necessarily with everything that he's doing, but he did lots of work in that power dynamics research, and some of it I do understand and agree with. And he talks about like the concept of biopower, and it refers to like the practice of, and I'll relate it in a second, of like modern like nation states regulating their subjects in the state through this explosion of, he says, let me quote, an explosion of numerous and diverse techniques for achieving the subjugations of bodies and the control of population. So what he's saying is that there's this explosion of lots of different techniques to subjugate the people in a state to control, basically, okay? Let me explain how I relate it to tattoos. I hope you're as interested as I am. I think I have two examples. One, again, a fun one, a little bit more, like to make it easier to understand, and hopefully one that's like based on more reality. So you have the name of an X on your body, and you cover it with a new tattoo. At this, just covering up the X's name, this act represents like an attempt to regain control over your own personal narrative and your body, of course. And so that reflects this idea of like self-regulation and identity that might be controlled, but you're taking it back. Okay, so that's why I mentioned this power dynamic theory. So you're taking back the power. So no, maybe you should not just have random people's names on you, though, just saying. But if you have, and you're taking back the power to cover it up, for example, and take charge of your own life again, okay? A serious example. Yeah, no, I mean, I did research on it, so let's say it, and you see me getting nervous. The tattoo of concentration camp, I'm stuttering, concentration camp numbers during the Holocaust. And of course, the subsequent reclamation by the survivors and their descendants, right? Because the now descendants of Holocaust survivors also have those number tattoos, for example. There's also lots of research on it that those tattoos have transformed from symbols of oppression to markers of like memory and resilience, because we survived. My family survived. And now I wear it to show you didn't want me to survive, but we did. Okay, so it's like memory to like the family that survived, your family members, but also as a show mark of resilience. And you see me struggling with talking about that time because you know my background. So yeah. Okay, last two. Mainstream media, the perception changed. Tattoo perception changed clearly, right? Why? Cultivation theory, one of our oldest and most trusted friends here. It suggests, as you know, if you listen to the pod, a long-term exposure to media content shapes the viewer's perception of reality. The more time people spend living in that world of media, postmodernism, the more likely they are to believe social reality aligns with media portrayals, okay? For example, the evolution of like tattooed characters in movies from like those stereotypical like villains to very complex protagonists. And the shift reflects this potential influence changing in like societal attitudes towards tattoos, I think. Because now not only the gangsters have tattoos, everybody has tattoos, right? And we can also see this not only in movies, we can also see this in the real world, that like we see an increased representation of tattooed professionals in the media, in the workplace, as university professors, teachers, you name it. Okay, so we see the change of perception because society is exposed to it more and more and more and realizes, hey, just because you have a tattoo doesn't mean you're a gangster. That's only the case if you have a face tattoo. You get the point. We talked about this many times, so I'm going to jump to the last one. The one that I mentioned in the last two episodes. So you see I'm really into that theory. The diffusion of innovation. I mentioned it in the last episode that was totally not related to today, but I think it still fits because this theory describes how, why, and at what rate new ideas and technologies spread through cultures. And there are 5 stages of adoption. The innovators, the early adopters, the early majority, the late majority, and the laggards that so a fun example here would be like the job stopper tattoos, like highly visible tattoos that might hinder traditional employment. Okay, this trend could be seen as like a mark of like changing workplace norms. What it relates to what I just said in the point earlier, right? Like early adopters, like challenging conventional standards. For example, university professors showing their tattoos. And just kind of like fighting, taking on that conventional standard. Like, just because I have a tattoo doesn't mean I cannot educate you, for example, and teach you something. My favorite example for that, even though I like the professor example, but my favorite example when I did the research on all that was that there are actually biotech tattoos for health monitoring, which I find super cool. And I didn't notice until just recently when I was preparing that episode that there are color-changing tattoos that indicate blood sugar levels. So I heard about that, but I've really not thought about it actively, to be honest. And that comes from apparently MIT and Harvard. And I think that's a fantastic example of like also Bono's theory, convergence theory, how body art and medical technology just converge together for maybe even allowing that curve of adoption to be like shortened, right? So that we see more early adopters because they suffer from this health issue, but maybe then that tattoo can help them. So then we see more early adopters there. I find this to be very fascinating. I hope that you also at least take something away from that. I could talk about tattoos forever, but it's been 30 minutes, so actually longer than our normal sessions together. Let me know what you think about tattoos. Do you have tattoos? What do they mean to you? Are you someone that gets tattoos spontaneously, or do you really think about it for a long time? Do they mean something to you? Do you hate tattoos? How's it at the workplace? How do they affect your life? And so on. As always, it would be cool to hear you talk about it in the comments at FunKitPod on social media. Leave a review wherever you listen to the podcast. It really helps to reach more people, and it's very much appreciated. Until then, stay safe, take care, get some ink, and we talk soon. Sawadee ka.